You want one word?
An Amiga? Right on.
Amazing Amiga, that's it.
I was going to say awesome, but that sounds like a cartoon.
Radical, and it's certainly a radical machine.
Awesome. One word? Amiga. Friend. You know, I mean, that's what it means.
The Amiga has always belonged to the dreamers. It was invented by an eclectic band of individuals led by Jay Miner, a group that became close friends with an active sense of humor, an overactive work ethic, and an almost childlike enthusiasm. They set out to make their dream computer, one they'd like to use themselves, real cool, real fast, with lots of power and lots of whizzy demos. The team was brilliant, creative. Without a thought, they abandoned the stodgy conventions that said computers are computers and toys are toys. And whether you believe the Amiga is a game machine or a business machine, there's no denying that the combination of power and graphics was a revolution in computing. Only now are the other computers beginning to meet the standards that the Amiga inventors set almost 10 years ago. That original Amiga team created the machine. They brought to it their unique personality and put out something totally new. Their story is unique. It tells of entrepreneurship, passion, trust, courage, and friendship. It's a very personal story. It belongs to Jay and Dave and Carl, the four Bobs, and all the others at Amiga. It can't be told by anybody else, so when we decided to record the story, we brought the original members together, collected their personal photographs, and borrowed their home film footage. Here, in their own words, is the story of the making of the Amiga.
Well, it was in 1982. A friend of mine that I used to work with at Atari came to me and said, "Hey Jay, let's start a new company. I'm tired of this one." And I said, "Well, fine." I said, "I'll do the chips for it, and I'll be the vice president if I can do the chips my way." My original vision of the machine was as a low-cost entry into the computer field via the video game area. Video games at that time were really hot, and all our investors wanted was a video game. But I wanted something that could be expanded into a real computer. We got a vice president out from back east called Dave Morse, a president rather, called Dave Morse, who was vice president of Tonka Toys, came out to be our president, and started a little company over on Scott Boulevard in Santa Clara called High Toro. And High Toro later got its name changed to Amiga Corporation.
High Toro, which is interesting. High meaning big, great, grand. Toro meaning bull.
First thing I thought of when I saw that name was lawnmowers. And so I think that when they talked to other people about it, they got the same impression too, that it was a lawnmower company. So they changed it. And Amiga Corporation was what it was when I joined. And Amiga was, they chose the name Amiga because they were looking for something that meant friend or friendly.
But in Silicon Valley, there is an extremely high concentration of computer companies, and there's a lot of spying that goes on all the time, and people trying to take ideas from other people and trying to outdo one another. And so it's really important to conceal what you're doing and to, at least to not broadcast around the things that you're working on, especially with the project that we're working on, with the ideas that we had. We thought that we had a gold mine in our hands and that we were going to be able to do something really major with this idea. So we had to hide it as much as we could for as long as we could. And so they set the company up to the real world to look as if it was High Toro and then Amiga Computer, a company that made game peripherals. And the industry said, "What's that new company over there on Scott Avenue?" And they went and they looked with their binoculars in the window and they saw, "Oh, joysticks, no problem, okay." When I first interviewed at Amiga, it was very interesting. I was there to do a game machine. I got hired to work on, the next greatest game machine is going to be the greatest thing. And I'm talking with everyone, and I interviewed with everyone, and I talked with the hardware guys, and I talked with them, and I'm talking with Dave Morse, and he's giving me the spiel, you know, oh, the next greatest machine, and oh, it's going to be wonderful, take the game industry by storm. And then I made my way back to Jay's office, and I'm talking with him to get a feel for the real, you know, what the hardware's really like and stuff like that. And he's got a whiteboard behind him while we're talking, and it's, you know, RAM and CPU and stuff like that. But there's this one little box that comes off in the corner that has KBD PRT on it. It's a keyboard port on a game machine? There's this other little box down here, EXT DRV, external drive on a game machine? So I go back, I talk to Morris and say, game machine, right? Game machine. Yeah, game machine. It's gonna be I go, Jay, game machine? He says, yeah, game machine, yeah, game machine.
I was the first software guy that Bob Pariseau hired, and when I was hired as manager of entertainment software because I'd worked in the video game business, and I soon found out there are not a lot of starving startup companies that want to put aside all their other projects and work on a vaporware computer, which it totally was back then. And plus also I found out I'd much rather hack code than you know, try to get other people to hack code.
I was hired as the manager of operating systems, and the day I got there, actually, the day I was interviewed there, Bob Pariseau said to me, well, if you come here, you can design whatever operating system you want. I said, I'll do a multitasking operating system. So that's why I went to work at Amiga, was the multitasking operating system.
First, when I had my first interview, I had talked to the recruiter and she set up an interview. And, but I accidentally blew it off because I went to I forgot all about it. I went to an HP beer bust, which was important too. But I looked at my watch at 7 o'clock and I go, oh my gosh, and I just missed an interview that I was really looking forward to go to. So the next day I called them up and said, well, gee, I'm real sorry. Can I have another interview? Can we schedule another time? And they said, oh, sure, fine, just come on down whenever you can. And so I knew that there was a pretty good atmosphere there when that happened.
I'm interviewing with Gary McCoy, for whom I was supposed to work. And he takes me back into the software lab where everybody is all over everybody else. And I guess you guys were really used to giving demos to venture capital people and such. So I come through with Gary, and the talking heads are on, and I'm awestruck. I'm watching this thing. But it was very loud in there. Very loud and very warm. I mean, if it wasn't the voice, there were the fans in the background. And so I'm watching this, and Gary's getting very frustrated because he was proud of what we were seeing. And finally just exploded. Knock it off, he screams. And I was trying to calm him down. I'm interviewing from a job and pissing everybody off. So he says, I said, don't worry, Gary, I can understand. I can lip read. And so after the demo, Sam comes up to me and says, really? Could you read the lip? And I looked at him and I said, well, how close was it? Was it pretty close? I was joking, not to make Gary, but I thought, this is perfect. This is the best company to work for.
He was really working on that.
Well, now that Jay is here, I can tell the story in front of Jay, so he can agree that, in fact, it's true. Everybody seems to think Jay is the father of the Amiga. And when you look at Jay and the real father of the Amiga...
Is this on my badge?
Yes, that's so right on his badge. Even they made the same mistake. It's quite natural. One magazine back in the Amiga days got it right, but everybody laughed at it like it was some sort of a joke, but it was actually the truth. Jay was holding Mitchie in his arms. Right next to Mitchie, it said the father of the Amiga, and up here it said Jay. And yeah, this is Jay. This is the father of the Amiga. We knew inside that this was a true story because we're sitting there at our desk designing stuff, and Jay, who sat in front of us, was sitting at his desk designing stuff. And he'd get to some spot where he wasn't sure. Well, do I put this gate here? And he thinks about it and see, draw a gate. And he'd look down at Mitchie. And Mitchie would go, and so he'd erase it. And he'd draw another gate. And he'd look down at Mitchie. Mitchie would go, and so then he would put that gate in. We know because we were there. Mitchie did the Amiga. Jay, Jay did the drawing. It's all right. It's okay. But I wanted you to be here so that you could not shoot me.
Allowing people to be different is terribly important. This guy would come to work in these huge, fuzzy bathroom slippers. Or bare feet. Michael Plotnick would come to work in purple purple sweatpants. We could go on and on and on this way. I came to work with my dog, you know. Everybody had something that they wanted to do. And who cares, as long as you get the work done.
There was magic. I can't describe it. From the day I walked in and I saw that demo and I saw everybody contributing, cooperating, always a smile, always a smile, always the optimistic attitude and care for somebody else's happiness and participation and success. One person was not going to let somebody else fail because that would mean the failure of the whole project.
We were trying to find people that had fire, that had a spirit, that had a dream that they were trying to accomplish. Carl Sassenrath, the guy that did the exec for the machine, was his lifelong dream to do a multitasking operating system that would be a work of art, that would be a thing of beauty. Dale Luck, the guy that did the graphics, this was his undying dream since he was in college to do this incredible graphic stuff. And we were looking for people with that kind of passion, that kind of spirit, and more than anything else, the thing that we were looking for was someone that was for people who were trying to make a mark on the world, not just in the industry, but on the world in general. We're trying to get we're trying to look for people that really wanted to make a statement, that really wanted to do an incredibly great thing, not someone who was just looking for a job.
Called the software cave, which was a room I'd say about 30 feet by 15 feet or 20 feet. I started about in August of '83. There was no hardware still. There was just some drawings on a whiteboard. Most of the hardware in terms of the Blitter, the Agnes chip, the Porsche chip, and the Daphne chip had already been designed. Now those Daphne and Porsche you probably may not have heard of, but those were earlier versions of the Denise and Paula chip.
We had the board all laid out and everything, and all the architecture based on 512K RAM. Commodore came around and said, "Can't you make a 256K RAM? 512K RAM is so expensive today." I said, "Look, RAM is going to come down." But no. I said, "Well, it can't be done. I'm sorry." So I just went off. I come back a week later, find out, guess who told him how to do it? Guess who actually did it for him, made 256K. You know that plug-in on the front? Yeah. Here's the culprit right here. I've never forgiven him for that.
PC came out at 16. Okay, the original PCs were coming out at 16K. And I had a PC at home, and so I was praying, Jay, make it 64K at least. Please, 64K at least.
512K from the start in terms of socket capability.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, you don't have to plug all those chips in if you want to make it cheaper.
Right.
But at least you got the holes there that the guy can plug them into later. And the architecture with that as a basis for the software. You follow me? But no, the cost of those sockets were about 3 cents a piece. And that was too expensive for Commodore and other people.
I owned an IBM PC at home, and I programmed on the IBM PC. And when I crashed my IBM PC, the screen went dark, and it would reboot sometimes, or you'd have to turn it off, actually, and turn it back on. And about that same time, Macintosh, was coming out, and they had this little bomb. I'd heard about their little bomb that came up on the screen. I thought, that's kind of interesting, coming up with some sort of indication that your software failed, that your machine failed. And I sat down and I thought about it, and I thought, you're going to have a sense of humor. If your machine fails like this, and you've lost 2 hours worth of editing, you're going to want to laugh about this somehow. So we put it in there. The machine crashed then for Martin Shabilsky, I think, in his office. The machine crashed, and he saw this thing come up. It said Guru Meditation. And he said, "What is this? Take this out right now." and so I took it out, and it said software failure. And all of a sudden, so a new version of the system went out that said software failure, and everyone was like depressed. Well, it was like, put the Guru Meditations back in. And so we did it without permission. We just put it back in.
That's right. All the developers, what did you do? It's a software failure. What is that? So, yeah, we just put it back. We didn't ask. We just did it. I can remember one of the first the large users group meetings I went to, where people would go up there and they'd show their programs, their software that they wrote in front of the group. And of course, whenever it would crash, the group meditation would come up and everyone would be chanting, "Guru, guru, guru." Now, they wouldn't be chanting, "Software failure."
We made a lot of design decisions that were wrong. If you say we're selling a personal computer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we decided that we wanted the graphics to run fast. So it never checked. It would go out and it'd say, "Give me some memory," and it would never check to see if it got it. It just assumed it got it. And so if we didn't have 512 memory, we'd it'd crash and you get a guru meditation error. And on retrospect, those were mistakes. If we were building a personal computer, we'd be sure to not do that now.
Like the original color scheme of the Amiga, there are a lot of people that don't like the white with the blue background. We sat there with TVs to try and figure out what colors on NTSC wouldn't just bleed horribly as you made the transition from the foreground color to the background color. And it turns out those colors work great.
Well, I had 3 monitors on my desk so I could check everything. I had the Sony we used because it had crisp graphics. I had a TV so that we'd see how badly it blurred. And I had that IBM 2-color thing just so we could see how badly it looked in 2 colors.
Do you remember some of the cheesy TVs we had?
Yeah.
Joe Schlag TV Company.
We went out and literally, we needed to test how the video would look on television, so we went out and we bought 10 televisions. And we went into this video store, I think it was the Good Guys or somebody, and we said, "We want your worst TV." And the guy sort of looks at us and he says, "Well, okay, these guys don't really want the worst TV." And they say, "We've got this great TV on sale. It's $279. And we say, "No, you don't understand. I don't want a good TV on sale. I want the worst TV set you got in the store." And he sort of looks at us and says, "Well, this one's $375, and it's terrible. Great, we'll take it." Yeah. Wait, I should tell Rob's story. Rob Peck was my roommate, and this was a guy. He had an excellent talent. Rob Peck's talent was he could go into an engineer, get 5 minutes of explanation, and write a technical manual that was good.
He took so much abuse from us during those so much abuse. Get out of my office right now.
I remember when you were writing Graphicraft and Rob, and we were putting together the manual, but the program hasn't been written yet.
And then I had to turn around and make the program look exactly like those pictures.
A third-party vendor was doing this painting program they were going to call Graphicraft, and it was coming out pretty bad. And the only reasonable solution was to get someone who was going to be able to do it right. But you couldn't go find another company. You couldn't get, and there was all kinds of things got in the way with getting the job done. So Archie just did it. He went into his room and he did it.
Well, it was after 3 weeks of writing Intuition. He
Yeah.
closed the door. The door opened once. I remember. The door opened once. The door closed.
And all those
It opened
chicken
once, and he
came out.
And it came out, and he came into my office and he said, "How do message ports work?" So he went into a conference room. I explained message ports. He went back to his room. He closed the door. And like a week and a half later, he opened the door, and Intuition was done. And then there was Graphicraft. And it was like the next week it was Graphicraft. Closed the door. And then 3 weeks later, he opened the door, and Graphicraft was running, and you could use it.
There we were, working furiously designing this machine. Software guys with absolutely no hardware whatsoever to develop on. The hardware guys working like maniacs trying to get the hardware to work, failing miserably. The software guys were filled with glee. Because we got to take vacations, We're sitting out in the back, smoking cigarettes, enjoying ourselves, and no, I'm just kidding. We, in the software group, actually, were not willing to wait around for the hardware to come together, so we spent a lot of time pretending that we had hardware. And The way that we did that most often was to create little pieces of software that emulated the way the hardware would work, emulated the way those 3 custom chips would work. And it was starting to get real important for all of this stuff to come together well, because this is now getting on to the end of 1983, and we were starting to run out of money. It was starting to get pretty tight with money, and it became really apparent to us that we had to make a major showing of the stuff that we had done so far at the January CES show.
2 weeks before CES, we're getting ready to bring it in. Dale has worked out this stuff for line draw. There's no line draw in the hardware. And the other guys and the software guys saying, come on, Dave, you can do it. Put line draw in the hardware. What are you, nuts? There's 2 weeks before. These things break every time we breathe. You can't turn lights on and off. Some wire falls off the pin. You want me to change the design, rewire it. All these guys are going to go put line. You're out of your minds. No way. Bob Pariseau comes in and says, yeah, Dave, we have to have it, and jokingly grabs my arm. Mitchie, this nice little dog, this dog that I have not even pretended to like, leaps to my defense. Here, Pariseau was grabbing my arm, twisting it. Come on, Dave, you can do line. Mitchie jumps up, attacks poor Pariseau. What could I do? I did line draw. I had no choice. Mitchie came and saved me from a fate worse than death. And yep, so we did it. We squeezed and we ran and we screamed. And hours before CES in the middle of the night, you and Dale were in there writing code and stuff. And they were sitting in Chicago working under the bench.
So the hardware first came together about 9-10 days before the show. And the hardware guy said, here you go. Okay. So here's what they delivered to us. Most of you probably know that inside the Amiga are 3 high-performance chips. And the first pass at designing the hardware for the chips was, of course, not to actually do the chips, but to create something in hardware that performed like the chips would perform one day. This is actually an illustration of the Agnes chip. This is the real one, by the way. This is the one that we first had, the first one that came together. And I think there's eight breadboards on there. And each one of those boards had about 250 chips. So, you know, times 8, lots of chips. Unfortunately, lots of things can go wrong with lots of chips. And there were 3 of these, one for each of the chips. There was also a 4th one that was the breadboard itself. The whole machine also, by the way, was called Lorraine. Lorraine was our code name for what we were working on. Lorraine was the name of the president's wife, too. And at first, she was honored to have the machine named after her. She came in during those 9 days between when we got the hardware and CES, and she heard the things we were saying about Lorraine. Then she wasn't quite so honored. All the while that we were working, we had hardware guys that were constantly on call. Here, for instance, is a picture of one of them. They were there the entire time that we were there. There was always some hardware guys there. The software guys came and went. Dale Luck and I, in particular, worked there almost the entire time. Those entire 9 days, we worked nonstop trying to get stuff done. A lot of my work depended on the things that Dale was doing, and so I was constantly badgering him. And he was, okay, I'm working real fast, I am. Here's a picture of Dale working real fast. What Dale was doing was he carried around his pillow with him the entire time that he was working there. And the computers that we're using at the time had a program on it that we wrote called Beep. You type in Beep and it would beep. And it had a type ahead buffer, so you could type in an instruction and have the computer go ahead and do that instruction, which would take a while. And you'd also be able to type in beep long before it would actually be executed. So what we used to do, and Dale was an expert at this, he would carry his pillow with him at all times. He'd type in the compile instruction, type in beep, and go to sleep. 5 minutes later, beep, he said, oh yeah, oh, back to work, back to work. So back to CES. This was our booth. They had on the right-hand side little tiny part with, you know, games around the outside and joysticks and stuff. And over here on the left, they had this massive, huge area with no windows and no way to know what's going on inside of it, and one door with this enormous burly guy that said, yeah, what do you want? You know, anytime you wanted to come in, anytime we wanted to take anyone back there, we had to bribe the guy $50 to let us in, you know. Okay, go ahead, okay, go ahead. And inside that back room is where we showed the Amiga. The entire day of the show, we would bring people in one after another, and it was a great experience. And if you'll pardon my grammar, during the entire CES show, the one most oft-repeated comment that we heard was, oh, shit. Because, of course, no one had ever seen a computer back in 1983, or January of '84, do the kinds of things that this machine did. Here's a picture in the middle of the demonstration at CES. This is Bob Pariseau, who was the original Amiga evangelist, and boy, he used to do a song and dance that you wouldn't believe. The guy was incredible. Sitting next to him is Glenn Keller, one of the great hardware whizzes of the project, and it may look like that he's assisting Bob Pariseau at the demo, and Bob Pariseau is rolling merrily along, but in truth, the hardware just died. And it froze on a picture, fortunately, so Bob was able to continue as if everything was okay, but Glenn is working furiously in this photograph trying to get the thing to work again.
At CES, we'd always have the same failure every time. The same set of chips would blow up, and I knew which chips were. Glenn pointed them out the first time, so these are the chips that always blow up, Dave, every time we have this little static problem. Jay thought we were brilliant. The system would go down. Yeah, we'll go look at it. Change the same chips every time, no matter what was wrong, and it would fix it. It was a trick, Jay. It was a trick. We knew what that.
That's where the bouncing ball really started, was one late night at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And, but around 11 or 12 o'clock, I guess pretty much it was over. People were going to go back to their rooms, but RJ and I decided we had a few things we wanted to do back at the convention center where CES was. And so about 4 o'clock in the morning, after, I think we had about a 6-pack of warm beer left over too that we'd hidden in the, you know, those little stands that they put plants in. And I finally got it to where I thought it was reasonable, and I fell asleep. And about 8 o'clock in the morning, we got woke up by the guys coming back in to the booth, and they're like, their mouths were dropping, and they're going to go out and bring all the potential customers back in and say, look what this can do now. Later on, we finally did. We added some stuff that were desperately needed for the next CES show, and we added the horizontal so that it would bounce left to right besides just up and down. And one thing that it desperately needed was the sound. I envisioned something that was like boom, boom, like something really big and ominous and it was going to blow your socks off. And so we searched around to get just that right sound, and we finally, after a lot of experimentation, we got Bob Pariseau took one of these foam bats, and we had 2 of them that we used to work out disagreements, and was starting to hit different things. And then Sam would record the sound on his Apple II, and then he would massage the data so we could play it on the Amiga. And we finally came up with a perfect sound, which was Bob hitting an aluminum garage door, you know, one of those garage doors that goes up and down, and Sam on the other side with his microphone digitizing the sound that was reverberating through the garage. And so that's how the bouncing ball, the bong sound was developed.
And it was a great show. It was a moment of great success. You know, everyone who saw it was awestruck by the thing. A lot of the software developers agreed to get behind it. Some hardware people said, you know, it's interesting. We want to know more so we can start to design hardware for it. And we were ecstatic. We were in heaven. We did really well at the CES, and everyone was still working together. We still had that great passion, that great sense of pulling together as a team to get everything done, but it started to feel in the air as if it was going to go bad, because there was just less and less money all the time. It was getting harder and harder. You know, we knew the kind of debts we had run up with our creditors and the fact that we weren't paying them.
They never missed a payroll.
Didn't that have a lot to do with the prayer meeting?
Had a bit to do with me mortgaging my house, too.
Yeah, Jay did a lot of interesting personal sacrifice. There was a stock thing that you did that you changed stuff on, and you dragged money in from the house. Yeah, it was. I was lucky enough to be sitting 5 feet away from Jay while he was doing, you know, while we were doing stuff. Of course, the dog was there, but then after line draw, the dog was okay. But yeah, poor Jay on the phone. Well, okay, did I get a 1/4%? You know, and it was, yeah, it was a tough time, Jay. Thanks.
No. Well, I wouldn't have normally done that for a company, except it was my company, and I knew the product was, you know, I knew the product was solid concept, and we were so far ahead of everybody else at that time in terms of a really usable computer.
So then came Atari, and Atari said that they would make a deal to buy the company from us, and they. You know, they knew that we were real tight for cash, so they made a deal with us where they would advance us $500,000 to make our immediate payments. What we owed immediately. There was a payroll they do the next day that this whole thing came down, and then we would have 1 month to negotiate with them to come to a deal for them to buy the Amiga. And so Atari came in and they said, okay, we'll give you $1 a share for your Amiga stock. And we said, $1 a share? God, in our wildest dreams, we had thought $50 a share, you know, $75 a share. We're going to be rich. It's going to be great. God. $1 a share was ridiculously low. So Dave Morse said, you know, $1 a share is ridiculously low. And the Atari guy said, okay, how about 85 cents a share? So wait, at Harvard they told me you go up, I go down, you know, and the truth was that Atari knew the condition that we were in, and Atari was not interested in buying us. Atari was interested, for reasons of its own, in buying just the machine. They didn't want to buy the group, they wanted to just get the technology. Now we're down to the last few days before the end of the end of the agreement, where we either have to come up with the bread for Atari, or they would get the company. And then the phone rang, and it was Commodore calling, and Commodore said, "Well, we can make you a much better deal than that, you know." So they send out their plane, and Dave Morse hops in the plane, and he flies out to Westchester, Pennsylvania, or New York, or wherever it was, and what follows then are 3.5 days of intense negotiations where, you know, they're hammering out one detail after another. What's going to happen? Dave's interested in the people. Oh, this and that and the other thing. And they go back and forth, and they're trying to get everything worked out so that, you know, the deals are just right. And you know, when you don't cut a deal like this in 3 days without working well into the night. And here it is, the last night, and these guys, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, what are we going to do? And they're dancing, you know, to keep themselves awake. We keep going here, and it's the last minute, and there's the Jets out in the parking lot with its, you know, revved up against its brakes, and, you know, everyone's around the table, and they say to Morris, they say, $4 a share. That's our final offer. You're out of time. You can either accept it or, you know, not, and go with Atari. And he says, I don't know. Let me check with my people. He goes, gives Jay a call. He says, $4. Jay says, well, it's not 50, but, you know, it's $4 is okay. If you think it's right, go with it. And he calls up, you know, the other guy's a VP of marketing, the VP of sales. What do you think? Well, you know, it's not what we had in mind, but it's better than zero. I'll go with it. And everyone said, okay. So he went back to the table and he sat down. He said, sorry, my people say $4 is not enough. I'm going to have to decline your offer. They said, well, how about for $0.25? He said, okay. I don't know about you guys, but I would not have the nerve to look down a barrel of a gun like that. So they write him out a check for $500,000. He hops in the jet. He flies back to Atari headquarters. He walks in the front door. The lawyers are big fat lawyers with their huge cigars. Morse, yeah, glad to see you. Come on in. We got some papers for you. He takes that check. He slams it down on the table. He says, "See you, boys. I got a plane to catch." Yeah. God. Oh.
And all of a sudden there was Commodore and there was money.
Yeah.
And then there was a big building and the blueprints. Remember the blueprints?
Yeah.
Like, this is how we're going to do the offices. And like, how do you want to do software? How do you want to do hardware? That was Los Gatos building. And,
we went back to Commodore to negotiate the future of the machine and the closure of the deal. And Dave Morse told me, "Don't insist on an expansion port." I says, "But Dave, we've got to have an expansion port." You know, who's going to buy a computer that you can't expand?
Right.
And I insisted, you know. Dave said, "Well, you know, we're liable to not close the deal, and you're liable to lose your job." And
all right.
that's the way it is.
We're glad you did.
Commodore gave in and said, "Okay, expansion port."
There'd be no Amiga today if it weren't for that.
Right. I think so, too.
So the getting of the machine to slide from a game machine into a business machine happened relatively effortlessly, like I was saying, for two reasons. First of all, because the hardware guys were smart all along, and second of all, because the base of the operating system was designed such that it could do that. Wait, we had a multitasking library, device, interrupt-driven, preemptive, priority-based operating system in a game machine. So how did it happen? I mean, where did that come from? I mean, I know where it came from for me. I joined the company because it was a dream that I wanted to chase. Was that same, you know, with everyone in general, or?
Yeah, I think so.
To say that it was just a family atmosphere doesn't really say it, but I think that there was, I was just thinking about working late at night, working on a CES, and it wasn't, we've got to get this done or the company's going to fail. It was like, of course we've got to get this done. This is it's our collective effort. This was, I don't know how to describe it, but there was camaraderie, family. It doesn't really describe it, but there was people. It was kind of like all the cousins, all the brothers and sisters and cousins were in this office in this room together. We're all working because there weren't people beating us. There weren't stockholders. It was just, we've got to get this thing done, and we've got to do what we have to do to make it happen.
there was the dream of the machine, and there was the dream of the company. And the dream of the company was, when we went to work there, we were offered stock of the company. We owned the company, and we knew that there weren't a lot of big investors. I mean, there was Jay, and there was Dave, and we knew them. They worked there. It wasn't like mystery people investing in this company. It was our company. I mean, we really felt, at heart, it was our company. Jay and Dave made us feel that way.
But you know, I've heard a lot of people say interesting things here. Howard's trying to find a word to describe it. You're talking about the group here and stuff like that. For the first few years after Amiga, you probably know I spoke a lot and told the story of the early days of the Amiga a lot, and invariably by the time I'd get, you know, I'm running out of time, I got to kind of wrap things up here, I'd get to talking about what it really meant from my own perspective, what we were trying to do, what it really meant to us. And I would always end up feeling sappy, you know, like, because I mean, like, you know, how do you, how it's unreasonable to talk about a business as, you know, we weren't just friends, we were friends, and we weren't just doing a job or creating a machine, we were chasing a dream. The most important thing I learned of all of this was, you know, when I'm just this kid from the south side of Chicago, you know, and I got involved in this whole thing, but I'm still just this guy. And the truth of the matter is that anyone could do this. I proved that finally to myself, that I could go off and follow a dream and have it come true for me. And you could too. Yeah, this is a good one. Because again, we're coming up to CES, and it's last minute. Everyone's racing like mad to get their demos done, and Parasos, you know, being the correct boss. Okay, it's time. We got to go now. It's time to pack up the equipment. And the software guys, no wait, one more change, and they're unplugging our keyboards, and we're walking out the door. You know, so try to program, and they left us with like an hour and a half before the flight, and you know, we're all looking at each other with these big blurry eyes. Well, what do we do now? I don't know. Well, maybe we ought to go home and pack. Oh, yeah, good idea. So I went home to pack, and I'm going to get, you know, I figure just throw some clean clothes in a bag and fold it up. It'll take me an hour or something. And I get home, and there's no clean clothes anywhere in that place. There's just this lumps of stuff. Well, okay, I'll just pack it like this. I'll wash it in Vegas. Okay, that's fine. And okay. Now I got a half hour to kill before I'm supposed to go to the airport. And I'm looking around. I look at the bed. I say, man, I'm so exhausted. Just a little rest. I won't fall asleep. Just a little rest. So my whole body said, yeah, that's a good idea. But the brain said, no, don't do it. So I didn't do it. I went into my kitchen and I found the stiffest upright back chair to sit in so that I wouldn't fall asleep. And it was only the fact that I started to asphyxiate that I woke up. I woke up, I was already late for the plane. And this is the whole Amiga crew, all of us going to big CES, you know, the company's hinging on this. And I'm late for this damn plane. And the plane was already supposed to have taken off by the time I left my house. And I lived like 15 minutes from the airport. And due to distortions in Einsteinian time-space continuum, I drove so fast that I got there before I left my home. But it was too late. I got to the plane. The plane was already gone. It was there. It had pulled back, and they pulled the ladder back and all this stuff. But the door was closed, but it was not moving. It was sitting right there. And so I'm begging at the counter, please, my God, please, let me get me on that plane. You know. No, too late. Sorry, it's closed. And I'm finding every official. Come on, please, please. No, sorry. And then I found this person, a woman, wearing the orange jumpsuits of the airport, and she's got a walkie-talkie. I'll take you on a date as soon as I get back if you can get me on that plane. I'll take you to a movie, anything you want, any dinner, any restaurant. She said, well, what kind of food do you like? I don't care. And she's like, no, I don't know. I finally, no, I got some little disturbance here. Okay, I understand. All right, so they finally... So they pull the gate up and they open the door and I climb up the ladder and I get into the plane and all over on this side, back in the passenger compartment, this whole contingent of Amiga people, yes, he made it, all right!